So this is our paper, the semantic aspects of Spanish dialectal varieties in the Antenario dictionary. The aim of this paper, or this presentation, is to explore problems of representation of neological dialectal variation by discussing how the tension between neologicity and dialectal or geolectal variation appears in a recent dictionary of Spanish neologisms, which considers 6 national Spanish variation. This is the Antenario, and that takes only the data recorded by the Antenas Neológicas network. Our focus will be the analysis of 3 aspects that are clearly linked to geolectal variation, that is, degrees of neologicity, synonymy, and polysemy. This is the Antenario, and we will briefly introduce some fundamental concepts of our framework. Then we will describe the methodology of the Antenas Neológicas and the basic character of basic characteristic of the Antenario. Then we present the analysis and then our conclusion. Since we have seen the neologicity, that is in various works from the early times of the discipline, suggests that there are different degrees in the neological character of a word. That is, we call this neologicity, that is the property of being new of a lexical item. That is, it's a lexical property that is gradual, it is not discrete. And traditionally, there have been 3 general variables that have been considered to describe it: temporality, speaker's perception, and the types of resources of the lexical creation. And as we have seen, dictionarability or dictionarizability, if you want to express the process about making the dictionarization, this property is also a lexical property, but it's also not homogeneous, as we have seen in the presentation of Judith. The notion of dictionarability of the words or dictionarizability of the words is a property of being a candidate for inclusion specifically in general language dictionaries. So the other concepts we think that you might take into account is what is pan-Hispanism and pluricentrism. These are both notions that are used to describe Spanish variation and that have many impact in the lexicographic practices. The pan-Hispanic is a term that uses the ASALE, that is the Association of Academias de la Lengua Española, and Spanish is conceived in this perspective as a supranational language with a wide common base, where 2 varieties can be recognized, the European one and the Latin American variety. On the other hand, the pluricentrism is a notion that is applied for many languages, but it says that a historic language is attributed more than one center, each with their own standard variety. So in some papers it says that these different varieties have different normative, political, and economic status. So what is the Antenario? The Antenario is a recent online lexicographic tool that covers neologisms from different national varieties, exactly 6, from Chile, Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, Peru, and Spain, and it is based exclusively, as I had said, on the information recorded by the network Antenas Neológicas. So I briefly say something about how the Antenas Neológicas network collects the neologisms that then we use for the dictionary. The Antenas Neológicas is a network that is associated with the Observatory de Neología of the Institut Universitari of Lingüística Aplicada, as we have seen. What is the OBNEO with Judith? The Spain node is the OBNEO, and there are others, university, ours, Universidad Nacional de Sarmiento is the node of Argentina, Universidad de Concepción and Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso are the node of Chile, Colegio de México in Mexico, Universidad Autónoma de Manizales in Colombia, and the Universidad Femenina de Sagrado Corazón in Peru. This network uses the same methodology of the OVNEO, so all the results are then processed and they are available at the OVNEO. See, as we have seen, the lexicographic criterion is applied for the identification to the items, to collect the items. So every country of the Antenas Neológicas has a group of dictionaries of their countries, but they all check the words in the Diccionario de la Lengua Española and the Lema. And we can see that every year we have between 7,000 to 11,000 neological tokens. So which are the main characteristics of the Antenario? The Antenario was launched in September 2018 and has had 20 new entries every month, which allows for a highly isomorphic representation vis-a-vis the dynamicity of language. As an example, we can see this entry, Señalética, signaling system. What can we see? The lemma, the part of speech, definitions, two examples that of different countries and different newspapers, the labels of the countries in which the word was recorded, and then some information that we'll explain in a little bit few minutes of other dictionaries which are not the corpus or exclusion corpus for detecting the neologisms. There are other dictionaries so as to try to infer the degree of neologicity, and some blogs. And then there's a note, we can put notes to explain when the Diccionario de la Lengua Española of the Real Academia Española publishes every year, then we check out and then we make a note if our neologism is already in this dictionary. Here is the sum up. Then, well, we go to the analysis. Dialectal variation is represented in different aspects of the macro and microstructure of the Antenario. We have explained this in another paper. Since neologisms do not behave in the same way in every variety, our analysis will focus in three aspects that explains the tension between a user-friendly approach and a pluricentral dialectal approach. That is, the relation between dialectal variation and neologicity, synonymy, and polysemy. On the first place, we'll see neologicity. The Antenario has three simple mechanisms or strategies to represent partially the degree of neologicity. The first one is the chronological dimension that we have seen. No? The entries of the Antenario inform on the year the neologism was first recorded in our database. That is, since 2003, when it was created, our network, regardless the country. As we have seen in Señalética was first recorded at 2004. This decision, this unified treatment is the result of the well-known methodological difficulty to date the appearance of new words accurately. Well, the second responds to the lexicographic criterion. As we have seen, the entries mention a series of dictionaries that may or may not include the word, which can be grouped in two subcorpora, general dictionaries and dictionaries or blocks of dictionaries. The assumption is that the more lexicographic the tool that records neologisms, the lower its degree of neologicity. And we can see three grades. When the word has not been included in any dictionary, for example, verdurazo, it was first recorded in 2017, and you can see in the bottom there's no other dictionaries nor blogs like Martes Neológico, Neologismo del Mes that registers it. This is the the highest degree of neologicity. The second one degree is when the neologism features in dictionaries of neologisms or those of the blocks. No? For example, trolear, to troll, that is registered by the Neologismo del Mes. This is an intermediate degree. And then, if it is included in general dictionaries or in neologisms dictionaries, it has a low degree of neologicity, like googlear, to Google. You can see there all the. So, although this kind of information contributes to representing degree of neologicity, it imposes some limitations as regards representation of dialectal variation in all these dictionaries. And the third one is all these notes that about the recent inclusion of a word or one of its senses in the Diccionario de la Lengua de la Real Academia Española, because it sums up the chronological and lexicographical criteria. This indicates the fact that it is no longer obviously neologic. The degree of inaccuracy in dialectal labeling in general languages in Spanish prevents us. Well, in the second point, we will see what about synonymy. In synonymy, like every other historical languages, Spanish features dialectal synonyms or geosynonyms, that is, equivalent forms from the different standard varieties, which behave differently from synonyms within one variety. So the Antenario gives each dialectal synonymy full treatment, an approach that could be thought to limit the non-Pan-Hispanic or pluricentric perspective adopted in this work, but which still has clear advantages over traditional solutions. When dealing with variant forms, general language dictionaries in Spain, Spanish ones especially, usually place the definition under just one of the lemmas, but not in the variants, and cross-refer to the chosen form. In the Antenario, the definition appears in every entry and there are no cross-references. Differences of geographical distribution are shown through the country labels. Variants are thus treated on equal footing regardless of their different distribution degree of neologicity or frequency. That is, variety and their variants are favored over other criteria. This has some problems. First, as we have seen, or as we can see now, the Antenario prefers to provide a more general unified definition for each variant rather than different definitions specifying possible nuances of meaning. For example, ciclorruta, carril bici, and bicisenda that are used in different countries, which general meaning is cycle path, have the same definition even if these neologisms do not have exactly the same one. For example, in bicisenda, carril en la vía, it refers to an exclusive track in urban environments, whereas ciclovia is used for any path. In other words, determining the level of granularity in the definition if the aim is to capture what is shared and what is different in each variety becomes a problematic issue. The main disadvantage of representing dialectal variation this way, then, is that semantic variation may be partially lost. The second problem is labeling the country. We'll go ahead. where the word has been found at the bottom of the entry rather than each sense, also simplifies representation, since it may fail to show specificity of behavior of the dialectal synonyms. For example, videojugador and gamer. They have different uses. And the other problem is that dialectal synonyms often seem to respond to preferences in the process or resources employed. For example, crowdfunding is used in all the countries, but micromecenaje only recorded in Spain. And many of these would not be considered for inclusion in a headword list because of the frequency, but as we want to show the variation, we check it up. I will go in the other problem, the dialectal variation and polysemy, tension between the representation of dialectal variety from a pluricentral perspective and the granularity of specificity of senses is the polysemy. Two cases, briefly. In first place, the tension is observed when the polysemy is not regular in terms of Pustoyevsky, and whose senses seem to be full in terms of Cruz. But we detect that there are different microsenses in different countries. For example, copago. Copago is a system of payment, and we have two definitions, and the second one is said about some kind of specialist system, especially those about education and health. But we know that the microsense about the system of payment in education is mostly or uniquely used in Chile. So the Antenario represent different microsenses in only one sense, introduced by the phrase specially or by disjunction or by looking for a high hyperonymy. Although this may blur the preference of use of one sense in a country, it seems to be a suitable representation since it captures the likely future expansion in other countries. The other problem has to do with when the polysemy is regular and there are different frequencies of one sense or the other in different countries, such in semaphorization, that the second definition or the second sense is only used in Colombia, but we don't mark this. So, what are our conclusions? Our analysis highlights the tensions involved when attempting to keep a proper balance between the requirements of representing lexicographic neologisms in general and representing variation of a pluricentric language such as Spanish. Neologicity is an aspect of words which, given the different variables that need to be taken into account and the methodological challenges this involved, is hard to determine for individual words. Hence, particularly hard to represent soundly in lexicographic entries. The Antenario offers partial solution to this problem by including in the microstructure the year when a word first appears in the database and the lexicographic history of the word. Other data which could add extra information about the different degrees of neologicity in different varieties, such as the year of appearance in other countries or the frequency of use, may be considered for inclusion. However, on the one hand, they prove to be less reliable in terms of the collection, and on the other, they could hinder, if included, the legibility of the entry. Additional strategies, such referring to advanced user to relevant corpus, we will think about it. And about the representation of dialectal variation is a central aspiration of our dictionary, which is naturally faced by different challenges. I can say that the most important reason is that it does not seek to be an exhaustive dictionary of neologic variation, but rather a model of representation of dialectal neology based on a specific date of data, those obtained by the Antenas Neológicas network, and collected in the BobNeo. These may be restricted, as we discussed, but they provide consistency to the design and purpose of the dictionary, which is one of the main problems the collection and representation of neologies has. As regards the treatment of variation itself, different strategies have been adopted so as to avoid the kind of homogenization a pan-Hispanic approach has. Still, there are aspects of semantic variation, like the case we have seen of synonymy and polysemy, that for the sake of clarity in representation may end up going unrepresented. Well, thank you very much. I forgot to write the thank you slide, but here is the references. And thank you all very much, and thank you, Ilan and Annette, for inviting us.
Thank you very much, Andreína, and thank you also to Vicky, your co-author, who you didn't realize perhaps, but has already answered a question in the chat from Katerina. Thank you both. And Katerina, is the answer satisfactory, or would you like to raise your question or some follow-up to that?
I closed the slide because I can't see the chat otherwise.
Okay. Katerina seems to be happy, so thanks again. I don't see any other questions. So in that case, we do have a question from Annette. Please.
Okay, let me just switch on my video. Okay, thank you so much. And I don't know if this is a very clever question, but I wondered in the beginning, you said that an important criterion for saying that something is new is that it is recorded in a specific dictionary. And once it's in your Academia Real dictionary, it's not a new word anymore. But does that take into account whether speakers still feel or have the idea that this is a new word? Why is it so important to say, okay, once this word is recorded in a dictionary, it's not new anymore? I mean, there are other criteria outside of recording in a dictionary why something is new, because maybe spelling is still unstable, grammar, whatever, or meaning is still shifting. And I don't see why it is so important to say, if it's in a dictionary, in the specific dictionary by the Academia Real, then it's not a new word anymore.
Well, as I have said before, the lexicographic criterion is a methodological one, in Spanish especially, very useful, as we don't have others forms to determine the neologicity, because the chronological one is difficult. And the second reason is because we are compiling a dictionary that will complement the Spanish dictionaries already we have. And you have to know that Spanish varieties, there are very different kinds of dictionaries, but they are always taking into account the Real Academia Española, you know, because that pan-Hispanic way of thinking the Spanish. We have different kinds of standardization and lexicographic tools in the different countries. So we have to homogenize. I don't know if this is a verb. I don't know if Vicky wants to say something, but in the future, we will try to take into account some other methodological criteria to decide for the neologicity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andreína, again.
Thank you both.
Thank you to Vicky and Annette.
Thank you.